Good afternoon. I'm Joe Mendoza, Captain of the Sheriff's Information Bureau. Thank you for coming to this press conference to discuss a traffic collision which occurred this morning involving Eldrick Tiger Woods. Joining Sheriff Villanueva is Lomita Station Captain James Powers and other members of Executive Command staff. Also joining us here today is LA County Fire Chief Daryl Osby. Now I would like to introduce the Sheriff of Los Angeles County, Alex Villanueva.
Thank you, Captain Mendoza. Today at 7:12 in the morning, Lomita Sheriff Station received a call of a solo vehicle collision in Harbor or Hawthorne Boulevard, north of Palos Verdes Drive. We arrived on scene at 7:18 a.m. and discovered the solo vehicle collision, and the sole occupant was, again, Tiger Woods, and deputies. At the time, they did not see any evidence of impairment, anything that of concern. Obviously, the life-saving measures that had to be taken for the occupant of the vehicle, and Chief Osby will speak to that regard. And it was a solo vehicle. Unfortunately, during the course of the investigation of this, there was another traffic collision that happened with people being looky-loos. But that, thankfully, there was no injuries associated with that. The vehicle traveled several hundred feet from the center divider at the intersection and rested on the west side of the road in the brush. Sustained major damage to the vehicle. You've seen all the images of that. And with that, our Lomita Sheriff Station will be conducting the traffic investigation, and it'll take from days to several weeks to get the whole thing together. Once the investigation is completed, we will provide a detailed report. It'll be available, based on Public Record Act request, and we will not discuss it any further after that point. But at this point, I want to introduce Chief Daryl Osby, LA County Fire Department.
Good afternoon. I'm Fire Chief Daryl Osby of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. At approximately 7:22 this morning, resources from Los Angeles County Fire Station 106 received a report of a solo vehicle accident at the intersection of Hawthorne Boulevard and Palos Verdes Drive North in Rolling Hills Estates. Upon arrival of the scene of the incident with sheriffs on scene, resources and personnel from the Los Angeles County Fire Department observed a single rollover vehicle incident with one person trapped. The person trapped was extricated by the Los Angeles County Fire Department personnel. Earlier, it was stated that the jaws of life was utilized to extricate the person trapped. It was later determined by our personnel that a Halligan tube, which is used for prying, and an axe was also used to pry the person free from the vehicle. The person was packaged at the incident in stable condition with serious injuries, and because of the fact that they needed to be extricated, they were transported to Harbor UCLA Hospital. Because of the extrication, and Harbor Hospital is also a trauma center. As indicated earlier, there's also a second vehicle accident with no injuries. Thank you.
And the vehicle involved is a 2021 Genesis. It's a mid-size SUV. Para español, a las 7:12 de la mañana en la calle Hawthorne, rumbo al norte por la intersección de Palos Verdes Drive.
Sheriff speaking now as to reporters, and we'll wait for questions to begin in English. As we listen to the sheriff talking to reporters in Spanish, we'll stay with this as they will then take questions in English and Spanish. But again, Shannon, as we heard, this happening about 7:15 this morning, single car crash. Tiger Woods was extricated from the vehicle with the use of special extrication tools, extricated from the vehicle in stable condition with serious injuries.
And so much was made earlier today, and some misinformation came out that the jaws of life were used, and that was spread through various media sources today. And so you heard the fire chief very carefully correcting that, Michael, that those were not needed, but nonetheless he did receive assistance in getting out of the vehicle but he was cognizant and apparently asked for some of his things to be gathered as Woods was loaded up and taken to the hospital there locally. You know, and incidentally, Michael, being in Southern California, the orthopedic teams, we understand the best of the best, were on his case today. We understand the Q&A is beginning in English with reporters.
Deputies arrive
Let's
on scene,
listen in
there's a
again.
vehicle that's rolled over, there's someone inside the vehicle, they can't remove him. Obviously, that's
Was he unconscious or conscious?
we'll leave it at that. He was alive and he was conscious, and that's the extent of that.
What about the evidence of the impairment? You said
There was no evidence of impairment, so subsequent to that, we're not going to make any. There was no effort to draw blood, for example, at the hospital.
nothing was removed from the scene or found at the scene?
No evidence of impairment at this point in time. But I'll let Chief Osby.
Chief Osby,
Good morning.
was Tiger Woods conscious when you got there? Did he say anything to the paramedics who arrived? And can you tell us a little bit more, if we didn't use the jaws of life, how exactly did that extrication process take place?
Okay, the information I got back from my personnel and the things that they do is they would do a scene assessment. It was brought to my attention that he was conscious. Now, exactly what was said is unknown, but he was conscious. Our personnel make an assessment to make a determination of their level of consciousness, make sure that they're breathing, control any serious bleeding, and then control and address any serious injuries. It was brought to my attention that he had serious leg injuries, and that was assessed at the incident. The jaws of life are used as part of a package to extricate people that are trapped in vehicles. But it was later determined and brought to the attention that the jaws of life were not used to extricate Tiger Woods. We used a Halligan tool, which is a tool used for prying, and we also used an axe to pry him from the vehicle. He was taken from the vehicle with a collar and backboard for spinal precautions. He was had the proper splints because of the nature of the incident being a solo vehicle rollover and the fact that it required an extrication that met trauma center criteria. The nearest trauma center to the area is Harbor UCLA Hospital, where he was transported in serious but stable condition.
Which leg?
That I do not know. It was my understanding that he had serious injuries to both legs.
Both legs.
Chief, this was his decision to go to Harbor UCLA, or you took him to the closest emergency room. Given his condition at the time, was it that severe? That's what you had to do?
The determination of where to be transported was made by the paramedics and the captain unseen. The reason that Tiger Woods was transported to Harbor UCLA Hospital is because it's a trauma center criteria. Because of the nature of the incident, it was a solo roller vehicle and the damage to the vehicle, and then it also required him to be extricated. That's one of the criteria that meets trauma center criteria. Therefore, he was transported to the nearest trauma center, which is Harbor UCLA Hospital.
Was he airlifted, and can you tell us if he had injuries anywhere other than his legs, and were any of those injuries critical?
It was he was not airlifted. There were no other life endangering injuries to my knowledge.
Sheriff, in the way of a question, if you would. I know it's a little early. The investigators haven't done all their stuff on that, but any indication of the speed at the time that the vehicle lost control over the center divider? All the reporters here have talked to neighbors saying you're going down that hill, you take your foot off the brakes, you're at 50 plus before you know it. Any indication how fast that vehicle may have been going at the time it flipped?
Well, at the time it crossed the center divider to the point that it rested was several hundred feet away. So obviously that indicates they were going at a greater speed than normal. However, because it is downhill, it slopes, and it curves. That area has a high frequency of accidents. It's not uncommon.
Any skid marks or anything indicating that he tried to brake or stop?
No skid marks, no braking. So apparently the first contact was with the center median, and from there then crossed into the opposing lane of traffic, hit the curb, hit a tree, and there was several rollovers during that process.
They haven't given you any kind of a preliminary indication in excess of 45, 50, 55 miles an hour?
That they're going to have to figure that one out. That's why the traffic investigators make the big bucks that they make.
Sheriff, what can you tell us about his condition now? Are you still in touch with Mr. Woods'
We've reached out. We've been in touch with his manager, and they don't want to release anything on his condition right
We
now.
hear that he's out of surgery and perhaps been moved to his own room, Sheriff.
All we know that a serious condition as a result of the accident, and that's about all they want to say.
You looking at weather as a factor in this accident, Sheriff Villanueva?
Weather is not a factor. Well, we arrived on scene at 7:18. They were notified within 4 minutes, and
We got the call from the Sheriff Department at approximately 7:22 this morning. Our resources arrived on scene at approximately 7:28. I don't have the information right now in relation to how long it took to extricate him from the vehicle.
Do you have any indication if there were drugs or medications involved? Why he was heading that way?
No.
Who called it in? Did someone call 911, a bystander? And is there any indication that was sleeping?
we had a neighbor called 911. That's how the call was received at the station.
And you said no impairment. Did he fall? Is it possible he fell asleep at the wheel?
No evidence of impairment this time. That'll be subject to the investigation.
You say no evidence of impairment. What impairments are you looking for?
Well, we're looking at signs of under the influence of either narcotics, medication, alcohol, odor of alcohol, all these different things that would give you an idea in their behavior, but there was none present.
Any medical episodes appear he could have fallen asleep, had a heart attack, something?
That, now we're going beyond what we have at the time, so that'll take, the investigators will have to figure that one out.
I understand some vehicles now have essentially a black box that reports certain information about how fast the car is going. Did airbags deploy, telemetry, that sort of thing? Did this vehicle have that? Will you get information from that in the investigation?
The investigators will be able to, if they have it, they'll be able to have that and download it, and that will give us a good idea.
Was anyone on Tiger's team following the vehicle? Was it just him solo?
Not that we're aware of.
Sheriff, you said that he was conscious, I believe. Was he able to communicate how much pain he was in, whether or not, was he able to communicate at all?
He was able to communicate, and he was conscious. I'll leave it at that.
Señora Nueva, usted ya lo mencionó en inglés, ¿podría describirnos cómo fueron las circunstancias del accidente y mencionando la velocidad considerable a la que iba?
La velocidad no sabemos cuánto es, pero era considerable según el punto de partida de donde cruzó la parte mediana de la calle y donde cayó al otro lado eran varios cientos de pies. Y obviamente eso es una velocidad acelerante que se necesita para cubrir esa distancia.
Dijo que golpeó la curva y luego...
Hay una curva y está cuesta abajo a la misma vez.
Sheriff, do you know how long he was in the car before 911 arrived? Did he say at all how long he'd been waiting?
Well, we got the call at 7:12, and that came from the neighbors, so we have to assume they made that call almost immediately as soon as it happened because the neighbors, they're sitting right within 50 feet of the location. So
So they saw the crash happen.
if they didn't see it, they heard it because it's literally happened right at their doorstep.
This is a courtesy car that he was driving, a Genesis courtesy car, correct?
That is correct.
And is it possible that Mr. Woods was on the phone when this accident occurred? Or is this one of the factors that we're going to be considering?
That's something we'll have to explore. The investigators will have to ascertain that if it was distracted driving.
Can you describe how the axe and the special tool were used to extricate you from the vehicle? I mean, as far as the doors go, I mean, how were the tools used for this process?
As it pertains to the vehicle, as articulated earlier, it was a rollover accident, and so Tiger Woods was trapped inside the vehicle. So our firefighters and our firefighter paramedics used the pry bar, they call it Halligan tool, and an axe to pry parts of the vehicle away from him, so they were able to safely extricate him from the vehicle.
At what point did you realize it was Tiger Woods? Did he identify himself? Did they check his license? How did you know who it was?
They recognized him, and he identified himself as well.
Sheriff, did you say no blood was drawn at the scene from Tiger?
No, we don't have that capability, nor do we want it.
Sheriff Villanueva, the accident crime scene has taken a long time. It's been there now for several hours. Just moving the car now. Is there a reason so much time has been taken at this crime scene? Are there certain factors you're looking at? Are there certain pieces of evidence you're hoping to find? Or is it simply the fact that this is Tiger Woods and this is the way we're going to handle it?
Well, any serious accident of this nature is going to take time. It usually takes hours, and removing the vehicle is one of the last steps, and they've done all their markers, taken all their measurements, gathered up all the stuff, and then 3 or 4 hours is pretty normal, actually.
The celebrity component is not playing a factor?
I don't think that'll play a factor in it.
Would the neighbors approach you?
checking on his well-being? Did they like make it to the site and actually make contact with him?
No, they did not. No, there's a bluff. They're sitting about 20 feet above the place where the vehicle came to arrest.
Hey, Sheriff, could you talk a little bit about if he was able to stand after he was taken out? Was he able to take a couple of steps? Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like?
He was not able to get up, no. That was not an option.
Did Tiger Woods ask you to contact anyone for him? Did he ask you to contact a specific member of his family or a specific member of his team that was here for the golf tournament at this point?
At the hospital he did, but not at the scene.
I'm sorry, sir, can you clarify?
He did at the hospital, but not at the scene.
He asked you to contact
Yes.
a member of his family.
Who was it? Oh, a member of his team.
Thank
Can
you.
you talk about the conditions inside the car?
Huh?
Can you talk about the conditions inside the car? Was he trapped? Was he able to move at all?
Well, the interior of the cabinet of the vehicle was more or less intact. The front end was totally destroyed. The bumpers, everything was destroyed. Airbags deployed, all of that. And however, thankfully, the interior was more or less intact, which kind of gave him the cushion to survive what's otherwise would have been a fatal crash.
Hablaban ustedes de que hubo otro pequeño accidente después que no fue mayor.
Sí.
Platicaban también los vecinos del área de que en esa bajada hay coches que pierden control, que no son conocidos desde el área, gente ajena.
Eso es muy cierto, porque si uno no está pendiente y está con el teléfono o esas condiciones hace que esto ocurre con más frecuencia de lo normal. En ese lugar en particular, por la bajada y por la curva.
El accidente no hubo heridos, el segundo accidente.
No, no
Was
weird.
he wearing a seatbelt, or did he give any indication of where he was coming from or heading to?
Well, he was definitely heading northbound on Hawthorne.
Was he wearing a seatbelt?
Yes.
Señor Villanueva, ¿podría describir en español las condiciones en las que encontraron el vehículo?
El vehículo estaba destrozado por el exterior, pero el interior, la cabina estaba más o menos intacto y eso permitió que él sobreviviera ese accidente horrífico.
¿Puede decirnos si tenía las piernas quebradas o algo?
Tenía heridas en las dos piernas y heridas serias, pero no puedo decir más que eso.
¿Cuál es la razón que lo están operando?
Eso es pregunta para los médicos. How's that? That he actually struck the first one going northbound, and that was on the center median. That was one of the first thing that he made contact with.
So you've been listening live to a news conference going on in the Los Angeles area from the LA County Sheriff and Fire Chief there about the accident involving Jupiter Island resident and legendary golfer Tiger Woods, a father of two, suffering multiple injuries, we're told, to both legs, has been in surgery throughout the day. Not clear if he's out of surgery yet. The condition of Tiger Woods not yet known, except that he was taken to the hospital this morning after an accident at about 7:15 a.m. Pacific time, 10:15 our time, a single vehicle rollover crash. Woods had to be extricated from the vehicle, not with the jaws of life, but with other prying tools and an axe. It was a violent crash this morning. Weather was not a factor. No signs of impairment, at least according to first reports from the sheriff's office, and they made a point of saying that several times. No initial signs of any impairment. Clear weather. He was heading in his vehicle, a Genesis mid-size SUV, speed unknown, when he hit a median, crossed into an opposing lane. The car then flipped multiple times, landing down an embankment. Tiger Woods pulled from that car in stable condition and conscious, taken to the hospital for surgery. Multiple leg injuries. We're waiting to find out more details about all of this, and we'll have much more for you throughout the rest of the evening.